Hello YouTube, this is Pastor Green with another Creation Science Seminar. This is going to be 2B, Cavemen. You can email me with any questions at godsohman@gmail.com. That's godsohman@gmail.com. This is going to be a YouTube Creation Seminar. Make sure you subscribe to my channel and click the notification bell. By subscribing and clicking to the bell, it's going to let you know whenever I make a new video. Also, like and comment. By liking the video and commenting, it helps with the YouTube algorithm. It helps my video get seen a lot more. And if you don't really have anything to comment, you can just say thank you, good job, nice, whatever you want to do to comment, as long as I get a comment on there. I live in Cincinnati, Ohio. You can see on the map about where that's at. In 2 Peter 3, it says, knowing this first, that there shall come in the last days scoffers, walking after their own lusts, and saying, where is the promise of his coming? For since the fathers fell asleep, all things continue as they were from the beginning of creation. For this they are willingly ignorant by the will of God. The heavens were of old, and the earth standing out of the water and in the water. And God said in Genesis 1:6, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. And God made the firmament, and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so. I believe, and a lot of different creationists believe, there was a canopy of water or ice over the earth, and underneath the canopy of ice you had your atmosphere, then you had your continents, and then you had water underneath that. And having a canopy of water or ice above is going to do a lot of different things for you. Before the flood, the average lifespan was about 912 years. And God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness. And so God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him, male and female created he them. But see, the evolution teaches that we're getting better, and one day we'll be gods. But the Bible teaches we were made in God's image, and we're getting worse. And why do we all pay to teach the kids this as our grandpa? Why do we pay, we have to pay our taxes, which pays for the schools. And in the schools, they teach us that we came from an ape-like ancestor. So what about cavemen? Well, this right here is a little picture showing you that an ape could turn into a human. And it really depends on what you mean by cavemen. Many people in the Bible lived in caves. Lot and his daughters lived in caves. The 5 kings are found hidden in a cave. The children of Israel made them dens which are in the mountains and caves and strongholds. This right here was the world's most wanted caveman. And this right here was a former caveman. And see, someone's trying to make a monkey out of you, saying that you came from an ape-like ancestor. This article from ABC News says that if humans just talk more like chimps, we'd be better off. We'd be better at communicating. So what about cavemen? This is Evolution's Hall of Shame. What about the Nebraska man? Well, there was an article that came out in the magazine in a newspaper, and it said fossil finds might be the oldest link to humans and oldest theory challenged. And what they did is they found a tooth, and from that tooth, they actually in the article they made a man and a woman. And the London News, just from one tooth, they had a man, and they also found his wife. This is actually the real Nebraska man. They actually found out that the tooth was a pig. What about Piltdown man? Well, the New York Times said, December 22nd of 2012, Darwin's theories prove true. English scientists say the skull found in this place is a descendant from humans. Humans came from apes, it says. And in the Scopes monkey trial, they wanted to use Piltdown man as one of the people to prove evolution. It was actually a great hoax. They actually found this jaw saying it was Piltdown man's, and it turned out that it was just a big hoax. What about Neanderthal man? Neanderthal was first found in 1856. It was actually classed as 100% human, and more than 300 Neanderthals have been found. Joachim Neander was the one who actually found this area, and he actually said when he found it, praise to the Lord Almighty, the King of creation. And Neanderthals were long portrayed as an ape man who stood over, And this is a misconception. It was a largely result of a faulty reconstruction by the French paleontologist. He actually mistook the skeleton of a man with a hunchback for an ape man in the process of becoming upright. So they found a hunchback and said, well, because he's hunched over, he must have been an ape turned into a human. What about Homo sapien? They said that Homo sapien, which was the Neanderthal man, had a 13% bigger brain than modern man. And in this book, Buried Alive, they actually talk about this man, the Neanderthal man. And Neanderthal skulls from different places were reconstructed with their jaw 1 inch out of socket, making their faces look more ape-like. They actually gave um, basically the skull to 9 different facial reconstruction surgeons. And what they do is they take the skull and they show you what this person probably would have looked like if they had skin on. And they gave this skull to 9 different people. And as you can see from the pictures, they came up with 9 different faces. After examining the famous man, or Broken Hill man, it was an Neanderthal skull from Dr. Quazzo. He says you must understand the skull really cries out disease. The teeth are badly decayed, and the bones of the vault of the skull are extremely thick. There are many features that testify of a growth hormone in adults, basically saying that the skull was really big. And Dr. Quazzo was actually a dentist, and he wrote a book called Buried Alive. And he says that this person was really sick. The average age before the flood was 912 years. And then after the flood, it went down to 400. Then it went down to 200. Then down to 100. And today we're lucky to live past 80. They've actually done different things saying that chewing causes the brow ridge to grow larger. There's an actual Aborigine that uses their jaws for just pretty much everything. They use as a vice. And a flathead Indian or a European, different skulls. This right here is a picture of a man that said he looks like a Neanderthal. He's even got the chest hair to prove it. And the brow ridge never stops growing. This big brow ridge probably indicates an individual that's about 200 years old. This professor lied about the age of the Neanderthal skulls and artifacts for 30 years, and a university panel exposed his frauds. And the professor resigned in February 2015. He actually lied about the age of how the skulls really were. And Cro-Magnon man was modern in every aspect, so I don't even know why he's on the list, because he was proven to be 100% human. So right now we have Homo sapien or Cro-Magnon man, but what about Australopithecus africanus? This little guy right here, or also known as Lucy. Australopithecus africanus was found by Raymond Dart in 1924. It was proclaimed as an intermediate link between apes and man. In 1973, South African geologists announced that the cave skulls found in were no more than 3/4 million years old, which means that the skull could never be a missing link between apes and humans. And it's actually, they say that it's unfortunate that Dart had no access of skulls to the infant chimpanzees, gorillas, or orangutans of an age corresponding to that of the skull. If such materials had been available, he would have realized that the posture and poise of the head, the shape of the jaws, many details of the nose, face, and cranium, upon which he relied on for proof of his contention that the Australopithecus africanus was nearly akin to man. He actually was essentially identical to conditions met by infant gorillas and chimpanzees. And Sir Arthur Keith said, our comparison of the profile and full face of the specimen with corresponding views of humans and arthropod skulls leave no doubt as the true anthropod status of Australopithecus that it was essentially characteristics. It was a true ape. And there's a little picture on this little chart of Lucy right there. And this is actually the bones they found of Lucy. There's no facial bones. There's no feet or legs. Just a small little leg. It's really, really small. And the reason why they called it Lucy is because they were listening to the Beatles song Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. So this is right here where they found in Ethiopia. They found Lucy. This actually was in a journal news journal in '99. And Johansson he gone to Africa on a grant to find the missing link. And 2 weeks before his grant money ran out, he actually found Lucy. And again, this right here is Lucy. And as you can see, there's no facial bones. So how can they make a skull that looks like that from no facial bones? They were, like I said, they were listening to the Beatles song "Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds," which is really interesting that the song has LSD in it. But this is a typical Lucy skull shown in textbooks. And I don't know how you get such great detail from very few bone fragments. And this is not even Lucy's knee; it's the Hitler knee found years later, 70 meters lower and over a mile away from where they found Lucy. But the National Geographic called this bone Lucy's about 5 times in this article. As you can see here, they say here's a chimpanzee, here's Lucy, and here's modern humans. You see how small chimpanzees are, and see how big humans are. This is somewhere in the middle. They also try to say that the femur was angled, proving that Lucy was becoming a human. As you can see, apes are long, and man's has a little joint to it. So they're saying, well, see, Lucy was going from ape to man. But tree-climbing monkeys also have an angled femur, and they're not becoming humans. See the angled femur right there? And Lucy's knee was slightly bigger than regular ape's knees. Well, I contend that the bones of a Clydesdale are slightly bigger than regular horses. It doesn't mean that they're evolving into a truck. Yeah, you're going to get big horses and little horses, but they're still a horse. And the St. Louis Zoo has Lucy on display with human feet and hands, and yet no feet or hands bones were found. And the purpose of this display is not for education, but it's for a doctrine of the evolutionary theory. It was a professor that told the zoo that the statue was a complete misinterpretation, and I believe they know it's a misinterpretation. And the zoo officials wrote back, and they said, zoo officials have no plans of knuckle under. We cannot be updating every exhibit based upon every new piece of evidence. We look at the overall exhibit and the impression it creates, and we think that the overall impression of this exhibit is correct. So they're saying we're not going to go through and we're not going to change the exhibit, even though we know that it's wrong. We like the fact that it shows evolution is true. They've actually found footprints of humans in sediment that's actually 3.75 million years old. At least they say it's 3.75 million years old. So how could it possibly be humans? This is a article in National Geographic by Mary Leakey, and it says the footprints are described as remarkably similar to those of modern man. The form of the foot was exactly the same as ours. Weight-bearing and pressure patterns of the prints resemble human ones. Footprints so much very like our own. And Russell Tuttle, he did an extensive study of the Leote footprints, as well as studying the footprints of more than 70 habitually barefoot people. And he found that 3.5 million years old footprint trails at the site resemble those of habitually unshod modern humans. And none of their features suggest that the hominids were less capable bipeds than we are. So this guy looked at these footprints and said, I've studied people that go barefoot, and these footprints have the exact same pattern as people that I've studied. And then Russell Tuttle said later that the footprints were not, if the footprints were not known to be so old, we would conclude that they were already made by a member of our own genus Homo. So he's saying that if we didn't know this place was so old, we would think these were just normal humans. But since we know this is so old, it can't really be humans. And they actually put this picture in the National Geographic with the article. And I don't know why they always show, ape ancestors being dark skinned. And if I had dark skin, I'd be very, very offended by that. And then if you look at the bottom, you're actually going to see the toe separation. And they do this because humans don't have a toe separation, but apes do. So they want to go ahead and further say that, hey, this must be an ape turned into a human, and they're trying to give you evidence like that. And you can see a human's footprints and an ape's footprints. They had that toe separation because apes' toes are for grasping. And they always show these articles of people with normal human hands and normal human feet, and they try to act like, oh, well, look, these were just like us. There was a Dr. Oxnard. He said that the various Australopithecines are indeed more different from both African apes and humans in most features than latter. So he's saying that these are very different from chimpanzees, from apes and humans. They're actually completely different. This magazine here says that they actually found a ape-like creature that looks just like Lucy in Sumatra. What about Peking Man? Peking Man was made from a bunch of skull pieces they found in Peking, China, and all the evidence was lost in World War II. What they don't tell you is that they actually found at least 10 humans in the same area. So they found monkey bones and human bones in the same area, and they just took the two types of bones and they just put them together and said this must be a missing link. And this right here is Homo erectus. They say the first Homo erectus specimen was called Java Man, and he was discovered in 1891 on the island of Java, Southeast Asia. And Java Man, which means erect ape man, is now called Homo erectus, and dated by evolutionists at about 500,000 years old. He was made from a few scraps of bone found in 1891 in Java's Indonesia. And this Dutch anatomist, Dr. Du Bois, believed the evolution had gone to Java, Indonesia, to look for missing links between man and apes. And Du Bois took an ape skull cap, 3 human teeth, and a thigh bone, which was found a year later 50 feet away from a human, and said he found the new missing link. And they were going to use Java Man at the Scopes Monkey trial also. Rudolf Virchow, who had once been Haeckel's professor, is regarded as the father of modern pathology. He said, in my opinion, this creature was an animal, a giant gibbon. In fact, the thigh bone was not even the slightest connection with the skull. So even this guy here, who used to be one of Haeckel's professors, said that this looks like just a monkey to me, and the thigh bone has nothing to do with the skull. Like I said, he took his skull cap, 3 human teeth, and a thigh bone, which he found a year later, and he said it was a missing link. But he hid the fact that he also found 2 normal human scores in the same area. He actually hid it under his mattress when he was out there looking for stuff, and his deceit was found 30 years later. This book right here says there's not enough fossil records to answer when, where, and how Homo sapiens emerged. And this book right here says fossil evidence of human evolutionary history is fragmented and open to various interpretations, and fossil evidence of chimpanzee evolution is altogether absent. So the question is, and this magazine says, where are we going? Well, we're going to go straight to hell if we don't accept Christ. This book right here says a skull was found in Spain and promoted as the oldest example of man, and it was later identified as a 4-month-old donkey skull. 3 days later, there was a symposium to discuss the Orkman. Its name for the town of southern Spain was canceled because they actually found out that it wasn't a human, it was actually a donkey. And a dolphin rib one time was called a human collarbone to try to promote evolution. And evolutionist Tom White exposed the hoax. This right here is an article that says with Hobbit human ancestor. They found a skeleton with dwarfism. And this article right here talks about this dwarf. They found this really short skeleton and said, well, it must have been dwarfism. And they'll even show you this little picture of their brain. So here's a human brain, and there's the brain with the dwarfism. And all the so-called cavemen are dealt with in great detail in the book Bones of Contention by Martin Lubenow. Modern man is trying to say, "Oh, monkey, you're my father." The Florida statute says that all textbooks are supposed to be factually accurate. There's a California textbook that says that all California textbooks are supposed to be factually accurate and contain current and confirmed research. Texas has the same type of law. This says instructional material shall be present the most factual information. Wisconsin has a rule that their textbook should be factually accurate. Alabama has a rule that says their textbook should be adequate and current. In Minnesota, it says that a teacher should not deliberately suppress or distort subject matter. And Mary Leakey wrote in the National Geographic She said one of these early hominids was ancestry to us. We don't know which one. It could be something we just haven't found yet. So she's trying to say that obviously, they have to be our ancestors because we don't have any other ideas. And the outdated textbooks, the outdated teachings are still in textbooks. They still talk about caveman. And this is more information in a state university in Minnesota. Okay, there's Homo sapien. Then they have the modern man, which is Homo sapien sapien, because sapien means wise. So we're not just a wise man. We're a wise man. In Romans it says, professing themselves to be wise, they became fools. This article says that this guy here is the daddy of all of us. And articles like this appear every few weeks in the paper in order to spread the propaganda. And I don't know why they say that, because they don't know that this guy had any kids. This right here says this is the mother of all mammals. It was some kind of a shrew. If you find a fossil in the dirt, all you know is it died. You don't know if it had any kids, and you surely don't know if it produced different kinds of kids. So why do evolutionists claim that the bones in the dirt can do something living creatures cannot do, and that's produce a different kind of animal? No fossil would count as evidence. A similar design demonstrates a common designer. So what about the Stone Age? Where does that fit in the Bible? Well, see, I believe the Stone Age happened right after the flood. See, the people after the flood, they couldn't go to a hardware store to buy a hammer or shovel. There were no hardware stores. Everything was destroyed by the flood. You would have a Gilligan's Island type situation. You'd have a bunch of smart people, and they have a brand new land they had to figure out what to do with. The Stone Age was after the flood, when they got out the ark and they faced a devastated world, and some bad people were banished and driven out of society. And many cultures today make and use stone tools. Not only were the people living longer before the flood, but so were the animals. Here's a 18-foot rhinoceros. There's actually a bunch of animals in this thing, but they call it prehistoric. Well, prehistoric didn't even get written until the mid 1900s. Here's a dictionary from 1766. There's no word prehistoric in there. What about 1860? No word prehistoric. How about 1892? No prehistoric. See, a canopy of water overhead would increase the air pressure and would allow insects to grow larger, because insects breathe through their skin. You see, today's bugs are limited by the size because of the amount of oxygen and air pressure. Bugs actually breathe through spiracles. They don't breathe through their nostrils. They breathe through their skin. And they actually have done research in England, and they said that if you induce more oxygen, then the animals get bigger. See, an object gets larger the less surface area it has. As the object gets larger, the less surface area that it has. And that's why huge insects cannot breathe in today's atmosphere. If you take an insect that's 1 inch by 1 inch, he's going to have a surface area of 6. So he's going to have a 6-to-1 ratio. If he's got a 2 inch, he's going to have a surface area of 24, which is a 3-to-1 ratio. If he's 3 inches, he's going to have a 2-to-1 ratio. But if he's 0.01 inches, he's going to have a 600-to-1 ratio. So the smaller the animal is, the easier it is to actually breathe because they have more surface area. So the more oxygen and the more pressure, air pressure, the bigger an animal can be because they have less surface area. Here's a really cool dragonfly. It had a 50-inch wingspan. That's a really big dragonfly. What about a cockroach? It's one of the biggest roaches we've seen. They've actually found cockroaches over 18 inches long. How would you like to see that in your kitchen? What about an 8.5-foot centipede? How about 2 feet long grasshoppers? Wouldn't you like to have that for lunch? What about a giant tarantula? They've actually found cacti that are 60 feet long. How about a 9 feet tall donkey? They even had giant sloths living before the flood. There was a fossil buffalo horns that had a 12-foot span. And this right here is actually an 8-foot horn at the Joe Taylor Museum. What about a giant elk with the 12-foot antlers? There's even 10-foot kangaroos. They even said that there was a wombat the size of a little mini. There's a little mini on the bottom. They even said that there was ancient rodents the size of buffaloes. How about a bird that was 13 feet tall? You see, this right here is called the elephant bird. If you look at the bottom, there's an ostrich egg, which is the biggest egg that we know of, next to this elephant bird egg. They even said there was geese the size of elephants. How about 8-foot tall beavers? 8-foot long beavers, I should say. This right here should be the jaw of a 7 to 8-foot beaver. This is a beaver that would be about 6 feet long. That'd be a really big beaver. And then there's also salamanders that today, salamanders get between 5.5 to 8 inches long. 6-foot long beaver, or 6-foot long centipede, salamander, I mean. See, a canopy of water overhead would increase air pressure, which would put more air into the water and allow for bigger fish. This is a 646 pound catfish they found in Thailand in 2005. How about a 80-foot plus long shark? And the pre-flood wood have a stronger magnetic field. Dr. Ball, he's raising piranhas in a greatly increased magnetic, and he gets these gigantic piranhas. There's one right there. But the oysters actually are found to be 11.5 feet wide. They find oysters on the top of Mount Everest. It says right here, Mount Everest. People put their victory flags all over the Mount Everest, and it's in the animals that once lived in the sea. And they always find these clams that are in the closed position, meaning that they had to be alive when they were buried. Here's Mount Everest, and there's the water. It's 450 miles away from the beach, so how could there be clams there? See, when clams die, they actually open up. So because they're closed, it means they had to die when they were alive. What about lizards? How big of a lizard have you ever seen? That's an iguana. He's pretty big. What about a Komodo dragon that big? You see, lizards never stop growing. This right here is a Jackson chameleon. If you notice, he's got 3 horns. See those 3 horns on his head? Maybe if you give him a couple years, he can turn into a triceratops. So the word dinosaur means terrible lizard. This is a human vertebrae that was found in a Cretaceous sediment. It was actually found right next to a dinosaur skeleton. Evidence of humans and dinosaurs living together have been found all over the world. Dinosaur and human-like footprints have been found together in Turkey and Arizona. Arizona. This right here is a book, and it clearly shows a dinosaur on the front cover. Not long after finding the above-named relics of human workmanship and engaged in our usual visits to the Ashley bed, a bone was found projecting from the bluff immediately in contact with the surface of the stony stratum. We pulled it out, and behold, a human bone. Without hesitation, it was condemned as an accidental occupant of quarters which had no right to be there geologically. It says, Professor Holmes showed me at the museum a giant human thigh bone 3 inches longer than the average bone of the same kind, and it was taken from the same beds. It was a remarkable fossil. This is a fossil human hands found on the Cretaceous rock near a marine dinosaur. According to Science 2001, this is researchers have found 7 types of dinosaurs, and they were surprised to find frogs, fish, turtles, and small mammals in the plants in the fossils as well. This is actually an Inca stone. Inca stones are found in Peru, and they're found. People have them all over the world. And this clearly is a person riding a dinosaur. Here's another Inca stone, and it looks like a person's on top of a dinosaur. And there's Inca stones all over the place. This guy's got the biggest exhibit of Inca stones in the world. This right here is another Inca stone. It looks like it has a triceratops on the front of it. What about this right here? It's actually it's in Cambodia. And if you look, it looks like a stegosaurus. And it's actually dated at 1150 AD, and dinosaur wasn't even made up until the 1800s. And what about dinosaur? It was a TV show on Nova called Darwin and the Dinosaurs. And it says dinosaur footprints side by side with humans. Finding them would counter evidence that humans evolved long after the dinosaurs became extinct, and it will back up the claim that all species, including man, were created at one time. Well, if you ever go to Glen Rose, Texas, you're going to find this Pluxee River in the limestone layers. And at this place right here, you're actually going to find human and dinosaur footprints side by side. There's dinosaur footprints all over the place here. And you can actually see right here, it's just a artist rendition of what it would look like. And they actually took out blocks of this and put it into different museums. They actually have dinosaurs on top of them to kind of give it a little more realism. But they've actually found dinosaurs and human footprints side by side in these little mounds of stone. Here's a boy taking a bath in a dinosaur footprint. And as you can see right here, there's a clearly defined human footprint right next to a dinosaur track on the bottom right there. It's a book. It says, much to my surprise, the book documents literally hundreds, not just a handful, of well-exposed dinosaur track sites spread all over the world. Tracks, trackways, nests, eggs are the reptilian masters of the Mesozoic area are chronicled all over the world, and they record an impressive once indeed, in terms not only abundant in geographical distribution but also quality and preservations. Lockley and Gillette report more than 400 dinosaur track sites in North and South America alone, and they especially note 12 large localities around the world that contain more than 100 individual tracks and or more than 100 different trackways each. In 1984, Earl Flint, a geologist representing the Peabody Museum at Harvard University, discovered a rock quarry near Nicaragua in the shores of Lake Gilva, a layer containing fossilized human tracks, 16 to 20 feet below the surface. Flint described the tracks in these words in 1884. The footprints are from 1/2 to 3 inches in depth, and none exceed 18 inches. Some of the impressions are nearly closed, the soft surface falling back into the impression, and the crevice about 2 inches in width, is all one sees, and my first glance of some parallel to one less deep gave me an idea that the owner of the latter was using a staff to assist him in walking. In some the substance flowed onward, leaving a ridge around it. Seems in one secured for the museum. The stride is variable owing to the size of a person, and the changing nature of the surface passed over. The longest one uncovered was 17 inches length of foot 10 inches, and the width 4 inches. Feet arched, steps in right line, measure from center of heel to center of great toe over 3 steps. The people making them are going both in direction constantly in the present lake shore, east and west more or less. Among these and others nearby sites, Flint found examples of both barefoot and well-defined sandal foot impressions. All were geologically dated, being over 200,000 years of age. Now supposedly at the remote time, man was nothing more than a naked, hairy creature, capable of tripping a few flints and just beginning to overcome his fear of fire. In sharp contrast, the Nicaraguan finds reveal the intelligent use of walking sticks and the wearing of sandals that appear to be the best designed for both comfort and protection. We are confronted here with not just the footprints of a half-beast, but rather of a civilized human being. 2 years earlier, in the summer of '82, inmates working in the quarry of the state prison near Nevada brought to light a layer of sandstone covered with fossilized animal tracks, among them a number having belonged to an extinct mammoth. What caused considerable scientific consternation, however, was the fact that several human tracks were also found. These tracks were 6 series, each with alternating right and left tracks. The stride was from 2.5 to over 3 feet, and the individual prints were 18 to 20 inches in length, that of a giant. The straddle distance between the lines left and right prints were 18 and 19 inches. Geologist Joseph Lee Contour wrote a paper on the investigation done at the Carson City Tracks of the California Academy of Science on August of 1882, and attempted to explain them as marks left by an ancient giant sloth that lived during this late period, over 2 million years ago. The sloths, in order to walk upright on only 2 feet, as the fossil tracks indicate, would have had to get used to use their tails as balance, and there were no tail grooves in the sandstone. Not only this, but comparison between the Carson City tracks and known sloth impressions showed several dissimilarities. The sloth prints have marked the toe protuberances as well as the flying claw marks. The Carson City tracks have neither. The Carson City tracks, in fact, showed signs that their maker had worn some type of sandal or foot protection. Very definitely not the habitat of an animal. And this right here is the Taylor Trail. You can actually see human prints crossing over dinosaur prints. And this guy right here is look at these footprints. You can see the footprints right next to him. And this right here is actually human prints inside of a dinosaur footprint. And the only way that would be possible is the person was running and he was stepping in the dinosaur footprints as he was running. As you can see right here, it's a dinosaur footprint and there's a human footprint inside of it. And this is basically what it would look like. The guy's running and he's stepping in dinosaur footprints as he's running. And the Carl Ball says he has this footprint. It's a half inch shorter due to the aluminum shrinking. It was a size 24. This is a size 18 shoe inside that footprint. It's only about an inch short. And this is the place right here in Glen Rose, Texas I was telling you about. And you can see right here there's dinosaur footprints and human footprints. There's a bunch of different human footprints you can see there. This is the stride from 2 of the human footprints they found there. It's almost 1 meter long. It's 6 to 7 feet. This is more stuff from the book Dinosaurs by Carl Ball. This is a story right here that David Smith wrote to Dr. Ken Hovind. He said, "What a delightful pleasure it is to see God's hand involved in your ministry. My name is David Smith, and I'm an associate pastor in Cottonwood, Arizona. I had the privilege to see you in person when you were in Arizona. All your seminar you mentioned Glen Rose and Dinosaur State Valley Park. I grew up in Glen Rose, and 1 year later I was in high school and had the honor of going to Dr. Carball's excavations. On this particular dig, he followed the footsteps of a man which were beside dinosaur footprints. It was as if the man was walking beside the dinosaur because the prints were made with the same rock layer and are very close together with the dinosaurs. Nova was there to film the dig, and there were also evolutionists there who had been arguing with Dr. Ball the entire time. Nova didn't film much of the tracks or our dig, but they did interview the evolutionists. He made some remarks about tracks being man-made, though they had been previously under 16 inches of rock, and he told them he had not seen anything that would disprove evolution. He didn't tell the camera crew that he had refused to even turn around to look at the tracks we'd been working on. He stood with his back to the dig, and the tracks were making these statements. Nova knew this man had not looked at the tracks, but did not report, nor did they give Dr. Ball equal time to respond. This is the classic example of how censored and distorted television can be when it comes to creation, and how truly unscientific a scientist who believes in evolution can be. So basically, this is a little picture the guy made. He said he's showing you the guy, the dinosaur and the human footprints, and the guy refused to look at it. He said he stood with his back to the dig and the tracks, and he said Nova knew that this man had not looked at the tracks, but did not report that, nor did they give Dr. Ball equal time to respond. He later said that he thought that maybe a dinosaur had human footprints, and that's how the footprints got there. Dinosaur footprints side by side with humans. Finding them would be counter evidence that humans evolved long after the dinosaurs became extinct, and back up the claim that all species, including man, were created one time. That's what the Nova said in their evidence. They had the evidence right in front of them. They refused to look at it. uh, there was a debate with Gishmar, and they said creationists have stated that humans and dinosaurs were contemporaries in time, but were this momentous statement were true, the names of its discoverers would thunder down the corridors of time as individuals who had made one of the most outstanding discoveries of the 20th century. Of course, unless it was a media blackout of the information that may harm the evolution in the state religion. See, some say the footprints were not legitimate, but the Bible says that all life was formed in 6 days. And I can test to say that humans and chicken footprints have never been found in the same strata. Scores of people have seen them and think these footprints are legit. There's evidence that some dinosaurs are still alive today, so the footprints are really irrelevant. This right here is there was a man fishing with his family near Texas, and he found a rock with wood protruding from it. When the rock was cracked open, this octagonally shaped iron hammer was exposed. The wood handle is particularly colified with quartz and calcite crystals inclusions. Density tests indicate casting of exceptional quality. The unique coating of basically that's iron, which does not readily form under present atmospheric conditions, and appears to inhibit rusting. You see, what happened was they did a sample of this, and they said that it's 96.6% iron, 2.6% chlorine, and 0.74% sulfur. And they actually said they carbon dated the stone around it and said that it was about 400 million years old. And like I said, part of the handle was turned to stone. And the scientists behind this said that there's no way this could have been formed in current conditions. It had to have a stronger magnetic field. You know, in Genesis 4, it says that Tubal-Cain was an instructor of every artificial of brass and iron. So in the book of Genesis, it says there's people that knew how to work with brass and iron. This is actually a bell that was found inside of a lump of coal. But you know, textbooks say that coal formed 250 million years ago in the Carboniferous era. This book right here talks about in 1891, there was a find when this lady she was breaking a lump of coal apart, and embedded in the coal was a gold chain about 10 inches in length. This is an iron pot that was found in some coal. This is a vessel that was found in coal. It said it's a zinc and silver vessel found in solid rock over 600 million years old. Here's the clay doll that was found in supposedly 12 million year old stone. This is a 2,000-year-old battery found in Iraq. This is actually a hieroglyphic, and it looks like one of two things. Either they're using electric eels to charge some kind of machine, or they're taking some snakes and they're putting electricity through these snakes. But clearly, it's some kind of electricity going on. Workers found human bones in a well, tempered copper arrowheads, and a vein of silver. So they found human bones and arrowheads in a vein of silver, and they say silver was formed millions of years ago. They also found some advanced stone tools in California gold mines. And they were found in mine shafts underneath thick, undisturbed layers of lava ranging from 9 to 55 million years old. W.H. Holmes of the Smithsonian Institution is one of the most vocal critics of the California finds. He said, perhaps if Professor Whitney had fully appreciated the story of human evolution, as it is understood today, he would have hesitated to announce the conclusions, notwithstanding the imposing error of testimony which he was confronted. So this guy's saying that this professor should have never told the story. If he actually knew about evolution, he would have told people that this stuff happened. There's actually a book called Smithsonian, where they talk about they found a bunch of different finds that prove that evolution is not true, but they hide it. They don't want people to know about it. This right here talks about Thomas E. Lee of the National Museum of Canada found advanced stone tools in glacial deposits in some kind of an island in Lake Huron. The deposits were 65,000 to 125,000 years old, and the director of the museum was fired for refusing to fire this discoverer. The artifacts disappeared into storage bins at the National Museum of Canada, and the discovery had been killed. It would have been forced to rewrite because it would have been forced to rewrite of almost every textbook in the business. So the director of the museum was fired because he allowed this person to find this discovery instead of hushing the guy up and just hiding the evidence. This is a rendition of a coin that was found in a rock that they say are 200 to 400,000 years old. You see, when the flood happened, it completely rearranged the world. It took every single landmass and they re-added bones and all kind of stuff, and they completely changed the real estate. So anything that would have been there, if it was a flood, it would have been destroyed, and the flood would have redone it. So the flood would have buried the whole entire world. God gave us a perfect world, a perfect diet. God said He's given us every green herb that bears seed, which is upon all the earth, and any fruit of the tree yielding seeds for you for meat. See, in America, we eat the hamburger, fries, and the Coke. We don't eat the seed, vegetable, and herb. There's actually a great book on health and beauty. There's actually a seed inside apricots. It's apricot seed. And you got to make sure you get an organically grown fruit. And the seed has a vitamin called B17. Make sure you don't get make sure you get an organic fruit, not fruit raised on steroids, because you're going to eat the seed, which is going to be high concentrated pesticides if you get the normal stuff. And when you eat the seed, it's going to give you a big pucker. And some of you guys don't know what a pucker is. Some of you old guys are like, "What's a pucker? What's a pucker?" But it'll make you have a pucker. But the seeds contain cyanide, which is found in vitamin B17. And some people say cyanide is poison, but hydrogen is explosive, and oxygen supports combustion. But when they're put together, you can put out fires with it. There's actually a book here called "The World Without Cancer," and it talks about how B17 has been shown to cure cancer. There's actually a people Hunza, which is in northern Pakistan. They're called the Hunza people of Pakistan. They're Hunza right there. And the elders live usually 90 years or older. And the Hunza, the apricot, and the seed are the most prized of all foods. When they grow an apricot seed, when they grow an apricot tree, as soon as the apricots bud, they actually take the apricot, they cut it open, they pull the seed out, and they eat the seed. And if the seed doesn't taste right, they'll tear the whole entire tree down and start all over again. This is actually a study from a thing called Alive and Well, and the orange line there shows you the starting group. The blue line is people that have survived with nutritional therapy, and the red line is people that have survived through drug therapy. And as you can see, nutritional therapy has a lot more people surviving than drug therapy. This is an article from Jason Vall. Jason Vall is a guy that talks about apricot seeds. And it says, we tell the story of the apricot seed and the apricot seed extract, and how cancer cannot survive in the body of a person that consumes apricot seeds. The component of the apricot seed is found in thousands of other foods such as wheatgrass and lima beans, but it's found mostly in the apricot seed. Although it's safer than sugar and salt, the government has played on the word cyanide to scare people into not eating these foods. As of October of 2000, the FDA and the postal police came to my house with guns, and they took the apricot seeds, the computers, and the apricot seed extract, totaling approximately $40,000. They've helped a lot of people, and they have personal testimonies and success stories. You have referred many people to our company, many of which were first enlightened through your video series about cancer. We still direct people on where to obtain the apricot seeds and the extract, as well as supply them with an in-home clinic, which surpasses medical clinics by combining the best of all them and allowing the individuals to treat themselves in their own home. The basis of in-home clinics can be found at this website. and it says, "Keep us in our prayers, Jason Bale." So this guy told people, hey, if you get cancer, you should take apricot seeds, and by taking apricot seeds, the cancer will die. And I'm guessing because he wasn't a doctor, he's now giving medical advice, so they came and harassed him. Basically, for many years, people in ships were dying. They found that they had some really crazy looking skeletons, and they called it scurvy. Millions of sailors died of scurvy in the British Navy alone. So they started giving people limes on ships to prevent them from getting scurvy, and they called these people limeys. That's why you always hear pirates call people limeys, because they were eating limes which has vitamin C in it. And many diseases are cured by a simple vitamin. These are called deficient diseases. And maybe Genesis 1:29 is right after all. You see, scurvy was cured by vitamin C, beriberi was cured by vitamin B, pellagra was cured by vitamin B complex, rickets is a deficiency of vitamin D, and I believe, and other people believe, that cancer is a deficiency of B17 and vitamin C. And Psalm says, an herb for the service of man, and bread which strengthens the heart. And people they look at this and go, we mean bread strengthens the heart. Well, the love of money is the root of all evil. See, vitamin E, lecithin, and omega-3 fatty acids were removed from the bread to keep it from spoiling. And these are all things that keep your heart strong and the circulation system working properly. You know what they say? The whiter the bread, the quicker you're dead. See, there's two basic philosophies of health and medicine. There's the evolution philosophy, which believes that the body is a bunch of random chemicals that are formed by chance over billions of years, and diseases should be treated with drugs. This is called drug therapy. They give you medicine to get rid of the problems. See, if you have a car and the oil light pops on, you have two options. You can either find and fix the problem, or you can unplug the light. And that's what this drug therapy does. It gets rid of the symptoms, but it doesn't get rid of the cause. So you take these medicines to get rid of the symptoms, but you never get rid of the real cause of the problem. It says that the love of money is the root of all evil. Drug companies don't make any money if you're well. See, our body's designed to give us warning signs when we're low on certain vitamins or minerals. For example, deficiency in vitamin C causes hangnails, muscle aches, bleeding gums. A deficiency in vitamin B causes nervous disorders. If you get warts, that means you have a deficiency in zinc. And there's a great book on health and the history of people using healthcare to control society. It's written by Bill Sardi, and Bill Sardi is actually where I get all my vitamins from. His vitamins are just absolutely amazing. There's actually a book by Bill Sardi called The Bible Prescription for Health and Longevity. This is a book right here talking about how fluoride's killing people. The Encyclopedia Britannica documents that in 1845, a young doctor in Vienna named whatever his name is, he was horrified horrified at the terrible death rate of women who were dying after giving birth in hospitals. As many as 30% of those giving birth died. The doctor noted that doctors would examine the bodies of the dead people, and they wouldn't wash their hands, and they would go straight to the next ward and examine the expecting mothers. This was a normal routine because people didn't know about microscopic diseases. And all this doctor did was insist that other doctors wash their hands before the examinations. And by doing that, the death rate immediately dropped down to 2%. So it went from 30% to 2% just by having these doctors wash their hands. And to honor this doctor, he was fired from 3 hospitals in a row, and then he was committed to a mental institution where a patient murdered him. In Leviticus 3,000 years earlier, it says to wash your clothes and to bathe themselves after you touch the unclean. So if you find something that's dead and you touch it, it says wash your clothes and bathe yourself. And if they would have actually read that, they would have known if you touch dead bodies, you got to wash your hands afterwards. And the second philosophy is called creation. It says the body was designed by an all-wise creator, and he designed all the food supply to provide for our needs. It's called nutritional therapy. There's an average deaths every year. So far, 0 people have died from herbs. 3 people have died from dietary supplements, About 320 people have died from over-the-counter drugs. 9,000 people have died from foodborne illnesses. And correctly prescribed prescription drugs, over 90 to 110,000 have died from that. Correctly prescribed drugs, 90,000 to 110,000. See, the number of physicians in the United States is around 700,000, and the actual deaths caused by physicians are about 120,000. So that means that the actual death by physicians is about 0.171%. The number of gun owners in the United States is about 80 million. The number of accidental gun deaths per year is about 1,500. So the actual accidental gun deaths per gun owner is 0.0000188. Statistically, doctors are approximately 900 times more dangerous than gun owners. There's actually two basic laws of government and law. There's the evolution theory that says that laws come from man's opinion, rights are granted by the government, and the government should be all-powerful provider. This is called a democracy, and it always becomes totalitarian. 70 to 80% of healthcare costs in America are by self-induced illnesses such as smoking, drinking, drunk driving, being overweight, things like that. 70 to 80% of healthcare costs are from people that do stuff themselves. And if we're going to have universal healthcare in America, why not universal auto care? If I don't put oil in the car and my car breaks down, you should pay for it. What about house care? If I don't take care of my house and it falls apart, you should take care of it. What about clothing care? If I get holes in my clothes, you need to pay for it. It's the same thing as saying universal health care. The Declaration of Independence says, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights." There's a book right here called Hush Money, and it talks about being a church sovereignty versus being a state church, and it goes back to the 501c3. 501c3 is a state church. If you become a 501c3 status, it means you're a state church and you're not church sovereignty. But the second law of government is the creation view. It says laws come from the Creator, rights are inalienable, and government should be limited to the punishment of evildoers and defense, and that's called a constitutional republic. Patrick Henry says, "It cannot be emphasized too strongly that this great nation was founded by Christians, not on religions, but on the gospel of Christ." George Washington said, "It is impossible to rightly govern without God in the Bible." John Adams says, "Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to govern any other way." Jefferson actually wrote a Bible. It's called the Jefferson Bible. In Genesis 1:30, it says, "To every beast on the earth, and to every fowl in the air, and to everything that creepeth upon the earth, I have given green herb for meat," and it was so. So Genesis 1:30 is saying that everything in the world, all plants, all insects, all people, all animals, they were all supposed to be vegetarians. Well, look right here at these teeth. It's obviously a meat eater. No, it's a panda. He spends his whole life eating bamboo. They have these really strong teeth because bamboo is pretty hard. What about this deer? Isn't he cute? Look how big those teeth are. It's called the Chinese water deer. They have ginormous teeth, and they're actually a plant eater as well. What about these teeth? That's obviously going to be a meat eater. That's a fruit bat. Fruit bats have sharp teeth also. What about this right here? That monkey must be a meat eater. It's a vegetarian monkey. There's actually a story about Little Tyke. It's a lion that wouldn't eat meat. Little Tyke was a lion that was used in a lot of different movies. It says right here, early in the century, a female African lion, born and raised in America, lived her entire lifetime of 9 years without ever eating meat. In fact, her owners, George and Margaret, alarmed by scientists, reports that carnivorous animals cannot live without meat, and they went to great lengths trying to coax their unusual pet to develop a taste for it. They even advertised a cash reward for anyone who could devise a meat-containing formula that this lion would eat. The curator of New York Zoo advised the people to put a few drops of blood in the little tyke's milk bottle, and it would help wean her, but the lioness cub refused to touch it, even with a single drop of blood. And this lion lived 9 years being a vegetarian. This right here was done by Dr. Dino Live. It says that in England during World War II, the London Zoo fed all their big cats cabbage during the war. Due to the shortage of meat, it was being rationed to the troops. The cats did just fine. Also, when a carnivore kills an herbivore, the first thing it eats is the herbivore's intestines, since its mainly nutrition is already there in the partially digested plant matter. People say, well, mosquitoes need to drink blood. But right here is a mosquito that's stuck on a fig. They watched it for several minutes, drinking out of this fig. See, right there he is, drinking the fig. Genesis 9:1-2 says, "And God blessed Noah and his sons, and said unto them, Be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth. And the fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth." So before the flood, everything was vegetarian, and after the flood, we got to eat meat. See, it says, "Every moving thing that liveth shall be meat for you. Even as the green herb, I have given you all things." So in Genesis 9:3, he's saying anything that moves, you can eat it. And it wasn't until much later when Moses was given the law that they actually started saying you can't eat certain things. But see, God made a perfect world, and man wrecked it. Romans 8:18-22 says, "For I reckon that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed to us. For we know that the whole creation groaneth and travaileth in pain altogether until now." Charles Darwin said, "I am bewildered. I had no intention to write atheistically, but there seems to be so much misery in the world." When you see the lion kill the antelope, it's just messy. And he says, "Thus from this war of nature, from famine and death, the most exalted object which we are capable of conceiving, namely the production of higher animals, directly follows." So he's saying that all these animals go from weaker to stronger, and it just has to be that way. You see, the Bible says the lion is going to lay with the lamb. It says in Romans 5:20, "Wherefore, as by one man sin entered into the world, and death by 1 Corinthians 15:21-22 says, For such by man came death. By man came also the resurrection for the dead. For as in Adam all died." You see, sometimes bad things happen. Sometimes you get into a wreck, sometimes you get hurt. And it says, don't be caught dead without Jesus. You never know when something bad's going to happen to you. You can get into a wreck and die one day. In fact, people get in wrecks all the time. Isaiah 11:6 says, "The wolf shall dwell with the lamb, and the leopard shall lie down with the kid, and the calf with the young lion and the fatling together, and the child shall lead them." Can you imagine that these animals can be around kids and not hurt them? What's going to happen one day? In Isaiah 11:7 it says, "And the cow and the bear shall feed their young ones, and they shall lie down together, and the lion shall eat straw like the ox." So one day we're going to go back to what it was like in the Garden of Eden. Isaiah says, "For the child shall die at 100 years old." So Isaiah is saying that a child is going to be 100 years old. Revelation 24 says, "And they lived and reigned with Christ 1,000 years." Remember, the Old Testament, people lived an average of 912 years. God's got great plans for his kids, and you don't want to miss it. Isaiah 65:17 says, "For behold, I create new heaven and a new earth, and the former shall not be remembered, nor come into mind." 2 Peter 3 says, "Nevertheless, we according to his promises look for a new heaven and a new earth, wherein dwelleth righteousness." Revelation 21:1 says, "And I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and first earth were passed away, and there was no more sea." One day that we're going to get to go to heaven and see this beautiful creation that God made. We're not going to be on earth anymore, because we're going to have a new heaven and a new earth. 1 Corinthians 2:9 says, "But for it is written, Eye has not seen, nor ear heard, neither has entered in the heart of man the things which God has prepared for him that love him. All we can see is the light. We can't see the rest of the electromagnetic spectrum. All we can see is that one little small part right there. This is a box of Cocoa Puff or of Puffs, and it says "Big Yellow Taste." What do you mean, Big Yellow Taste? Well, see, this is a real person right here, and it says Ingrid Carey says she can feel colors. It does not mean she sees red or she feels blue or she's green with every. She doesn't really feel them. She can taste them. She can hear them. She can smell them. She can taste them. She can feel them. A 20-year-old junior at the University of Maine has synesthesis. It's a rare neurological condition in which two or more of the senses intertwine. Numbers and letters, sensations and emotions, days and months are all associated with colors for Carrie. The letter N is brown, and J is green, and the number 8 is orange, and July is bluish green. The pain from a shin split throbs and hushes orange and yellows, purples and reds. The colors in Carrie's world have properties that most of us would never dream of. Red is solid, powerful, consistent, while yellow is paintable, brilliant, intense. Chocolate is a rich purple and makes Carrie's breath smell dark blue. Confusion is orange. I mean, can you imagine going to heaven and seeing a red flower and walking up that flower, and not only can you see it and smell it, but you can also taste it and feel it? Imagine seeing the sunset, and you get to start seeing colors and shapes and feelings and sensations and flavors. It's just amazing what's going to happen one day. God's going to give us sensations that we never even imagined. You can read this article if you want. I'm not going to read all that because I'm trying to be pressed for time here. I used to use the computer programs on an IBM XT 8080, 8088, and it had 4.77 megahertz. And when I got my Pentium 4, 3.4 gigahertz with hyperthreading, 60 gigabyte hard drive, 2 gigabyte RAM, the same programs ran much better, and now was in color. If you're a child of God, you're headed for a system upgrade that's going to blow your mind. In 2 Corinthians 12, 2-3, it says, I knew a man in Christ about 14 years ago, whether in the body I cannot tell, or whether out of the body I cannot tell, only God knoweth. Such is one caught up to the third heaven, as I knew a man, whether out of the body or in the body, I don't know. So he says he got caught up in the third heaven. How is that he got caught up into a paradise and heard unspeakable words, which is not lawful for a man to utter? So when he went to heaven, he got to see things that were just unspeakable. You can't even explain what it was like. I mean, it's like explaining to somebody who's blind their whole entire life what a color is. Explain to somebody who's never seen in a whole entire life what does red look like. There's no words that can express to this person what red looks like. There's no way to tell somebody who can't hear what a symphony sounds like. There's just words that can't express these type of things. Philippians 1:23 and 24 says, For I am a straight bewuxer having a desire to depart and to be with Christ, which is far better. Nevertheless, to abide in the flesh is more needful for you. This is saying that the guy died and he went to heaven, and he came back down, and he says, I want to go to heaven so bad, but God wants me to be here in the flesh with you, so I have some kind of a need. I've got to serve a purpose. So let's summarize. God made the world. He owns it, and he makes the rules. And we are guilty of breaking God's rules. God wrote the 10 Commandments. This is, thou shalt not bear false witness, which means you shouldn't lie. And thou shalt not steal, which means don't take nothing. And we're guilty of breaking all of his rules. We will be punished, or we must find a substitute to take our place. And God is willing and able to take your place. And if you die today, where would you go? Because you're going to be dead for a very long time. And what on earth are you doing, for heaven's sake? Again, I appreciate you guys following me. This is, like I said, a creation seminar on YouTube, so make sure you subscribe to my channel and click the notification bell so you get updates whenever I post a new video. Also, like and comment. It helps this video get seen a lot more. Again, I appreciate you guys sticking with me. If you have any questions, just email me, godsohman@gmail.com, and I'll see you guys next time.